Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to your daily lighting critique. Okay, so we've got one video. We've got a handful of stills to go through as well. Let's start here with Dani. So we've got your animated file here. And let's take a quick look at the reference. Lost my cursor there. There we go. So we've got this reference. There's a lot of greenery in this space, like a huge amount of aerial perspective falling back, lots of warmth in the light, like lots of warm yellows and greens in this. That's kind of like a warm, it's just like an overall warm feeling. And then as we go back in the space, it actually gets brighter with like some pretty heavy aerial perspective. So I'm not seeing a lot of the reference in here. The color scheme's a little bit different. Like if you look at the shadow value, like these are pretty, these have more blue-green in them, where this has more, it's more like desaturated. So it's more just kind of like an even, so basically I think we can push a lot more color into our shadows here, and trying to get those to kind of match up a little bit more. The other thing is the aerial perspective into the background. I think that is something you should really strive for, and it may not be in there yet, but I think if this is the reference that you're going for, you definitely want to feel some of that as it steps back into space, because I don't think that the geometry here is that much more complex than we have here. It just masks it. It makes it feel like a broader, more elaborate setting than just that. The other thing that I wanted to point out is, I know this is low res and we see fireflies all over and just general noise, but this noise down here is a little bit of a red flag to me right now. So it looks like it's actually reflected light off of her. So just keep your eye on that. That might actually be an issue going forward. So we might have to tone down the light that's hitting her on the front side, and make sure that nothing is emitting light, like no shader has emission on it, because that'll actually cause that too. But it might require digging down and identifying the actual light that's causing that. You could also try increasing the samples, but that's a lot of samples and it may really hurt the render time. So just something to flag early on, because you're even seeing it like up here into this tree, which is kind of problematic. So that's that. Okay, let's move on to our stills. All right, so here we are in Photoshop. Let's go ahead and take a step through. So we've got just a handful of images to go through here. So I kind of wanted to talk about each one individually. Let's go through alphabetically. So Adrian, Adrian, you had a really great question about, because, obviously we do reviews here very similar, as close as we can to the studio environment, which is doing dailies, which is what this is. And you asked the question of, like, what do you do with the time in between? Like if you're waiting for something to be shown. So I like to have a couple pots or a couple pokers in the fire. I forget that term is, but basically I like to have a few things going on. So usually when I'm, looking for feedback, I'm pretty far along. Like I just need a second set of eyes on it. So while I'm waiting for that, I like to start any future projects. Like if I have a bunch of shots assigned to me, I'll start another one that's a little bit further out, and I'll just start doing some blocking tests and just some early iterations, play around with some ideas. Not necessarily something that I would need feedback on, but something that I just want to have some experimentation, maybe set up the structure of it, like the render pass and the files, and just start kind of playing around with some of that stuff. So that's a really great question. But onto the images, I actually kind of like this. It's funny, I like the background a little bit darker, but I like the foreground a little bit more filled in. So I actually like this iteration more. Yeah, totally much better with this light, a lot more dynamic. It's just, I actually like the way the lighting is hit pretty much everywhere else. It's just right in this region here. I would tone this down in either like a Photoshop or a nuke or something, or whatever you're using as your post-processing, because I don't want to interfere with too much of this. But like, do you see how now we've got some nice shaping going on this hat coming across here? The only negative is it's kind of a like it's like your original, where there's like kind of two different key directions going on, because like on his chest, this part is brighter than this part, but on his hat, this part is brighter than this part, which is a little confusing if you're dealing with an outdoor space, but this is more of like a contrived studio type environment, so I think that's totally fine. But this is really, really good. The only other thing maybe I would try is trying to get just like a little bit of bounce light up in here just to create some vertical shaping in through there. I think that might help out a lot. All right, so we've got this Joker scene. I think you've made a lot of really nice progress. The only thing, and you change this light, it's more yellow now, but if you look, it's just a little bit more orange than that. And I don't think you necessarily need to tweak that and resubmit, but just something to be aware of. It's just like a little bit more in the reds in here. You've actually got it in this central area. Like this central area looks pretty good, but on the edge, and I guess that's probably just that one kind of rim light. It's feeling a little bit too yellow. I would just push it a little bit more red, but really good job. Like you're clearly seeing everything well. You're understanding it and you're processing it in an extremely effective way. All right, Danny, so we've got these couple images. This was from your anime, so I'll close that. Okay, so looking back on this one with fresh eyes now. So a few things. Trying to think about. So we've got this light coming in here. I'm trying to think about like the next steps to go forward with this. I do want to pull some of this haze off of this because like the fact that that's kind of a lifted value makes it fall way back into space behind these elements that are much darker. And those darker elements tend to pop forward. So I'm wondering if we can't push this fog back behind this counter, and that will allow us down the road to add a little depth of field here. That will allow us to kind of focus in here. In terms, so that would be one thing I would do. Number two is that I guess these windows are plugged because they're very dark outside. They're like, well, this is very bright. These are very dark over here. It feels a little odd that we're not seeing outside there, but I guess if the justification is that they're like plugged up, that's okay. But it's also strange that we're just kind of seeing the edge, like an edge light here, but not actually seeing brightness outside that window. So I would resolve that or think about that as another step. And then I'm wondering if I'm trying to like build ways to lead lines back into this space. So I'm like wondering if we can't like get a little bit of rim coming down here on each one of these pews, but just like on the inner half of it, which might be a matter of repositioning the light that's casting on the ground into like this area specifically. So it really helps lead us down there. Because that light can be separate from this light. Like this can shine in however it wants. And actually it might tweak that a little bit, but I'm just trying to lead us down this path. And then the blue floor is throwing me off a little bit too. If you could provide in the next iteration just some reference for what you were thinking with that, because it feels a little matte, like it doesn't feel like tile. I think that would help me understand a little bit more. So I think that would be your next step for iterations here. Is push that fog back behind this. Do what you can to try and get some light just in this central area to kind of push our focus back in this way, and then provide an example of this with the outside where we're actually seeing some bright sky out there too, because that could help out a lot. That'll definitely change our perception on some of this stuff too. All right, so let's take a look at this one. This sky, this fall off looks really, really pretty. I love the color change in here. I think that these edges could be a little bit softer, especially like as we get to this bright part. Like there would just be like a little bit of light bleed around those edges. I love that we're seeing through this. It feels a little small, so I would check the scale on that and possibly scale it up. Because right now this feels a little bit miniature to me. But I'm loving that we can see through that. I would take this bench and shift it over more to the side because right now it's kind of cutting a lot into the scene. So I just push it over there just a little bit. And then, and then I would work to try and get some more color in these shadows. I think that would be a good next step there. All right. And then Diana. So love this, love the depth of field. I love what it's added to this. I actually would like to see in both these iterations, you do another version where you kind of like push the depth of field even stronger, especially on this one. Because I think that we can still read some of, we'll still get some of their facial reactions a little bit, but I think you can push it a little bit stronger. And if not, we can always pull back. The other thing would be like try and getting a little bit more bounce in here, just because this dark value now is kind of standing out a little bit strong to me. So just a little bit more bounce fill up in there. Jen, this is looking really great. I'm really excited about this one. I do think that we could push a little bit more, like from these lights, maybe a little more rim on the back of her and the rim on the back of him. And then I would tone down these three things back here to really kind of, and this one too, just to really kind of focus this in on the center here. And you can push this spotlight just a touch brighter too. And then take down the contrast on this sky because we don't want to quite read the rims on those clouds too much. But this is looking really, really starting to fall into place nicely. Kat. So this is the original image. We've got a little bit more dapple in the background. It would be great to get a little more back in here too. Really great stuff. So I would work on that. And the other thing that I would do is, do you see how this light now that we're seeing it from this angle on her face, is actually making her skin tone a little bit greenish? Let's warm up the key light, and to the point where look at the. If you look in the Hall of Fame at some of the images of her in there, you can really start to feel like a good, strong, warm skin tone from a lot of the examples. So I would look to those as a match point to try and warm up your skin tones in there. So more dapple back there and more and matching up the skin tone a little better. But this is looking great. Like the specular highlights on these are really, really looking strong. Rebecca, I think this looks great. Sorry to make you to wait to the end to just tell you that I think it looks great. You've got some good variation in there, which is subtle and tough. But I think you've done a brilliant job on this. So great job. I think you can pencils down on this one and move on to the next one. All right, that's it for today, everybody. I hope you enjoy your Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.